Hello, brains. Let's talk about being afraid to say no. This episode is sponsored by Sansama. Stick around till the end of the video to learn more about it. There are a lot of expectations in this world, and those with ADHD, those who are neurodivergent, fail to meet a lot of these expectations because these expectations are often based on neurotypical standards, quite frankly. I've talked about this before, but it's kind of like if you hold a stencil up to a person, you're gonna see all the ways in which they stick out a little bit. Maybe they're too much over here, not enough over here. You're gonna think that they're wrong or not enough. But if you take that stencil away, you can start to see the shape that they are and appreciate that shape. We live in a world where a lot of people want us to fit into this stencil shape. We have this idea of what it's like to be a good friend or a good partner or a good boss or a good employee. And a lot of them are based on these really neurotypical standards. And so there's gonna be times where it doesn't make sense for us to try to fit into this stencil in quite the same way because we're not going to be able to. There are going to be times where we need to have our own boundaries and say, hey, I get that that's what you're looking for. I'm not going to be able to do that. The way that my brain works is not compatible with what you're asking of me. There are going to be times where we need to say no to an expectation or to an opportunity because of the way that our brain works. Or because of our personal values, right? It's not just about the ADHD or it's not just about whatever neurodivergence. It's also about our values. Sometimes people are going to pressure us into things or tell us to do things in a certain way, and it doesn't make sense for us. Whether it's a bad fit for our values, whether it's a bad fit for our brain, whether it's a bad fit for our body, right? Like some of us have chronic pain, and maybe there's times where it's like, I don't have the spoons. There are going to be times where we need to say no, and that's true for everybody, right? There are times when everybody needs to say no. But I think the reason it's important that we talk about this is because there are going to be times that we need to say no and it doesn't make sense to somebody else and they're going to push back. I think we often people please and try to say yes, try to agree to these expectations or these opportunities that we know are going to be really difficult for us, if not impossible. And we do that because we don't want to be left out. We don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to miss out on things that are important to us. The fact that we have a brain that works differently doesn't mean that we don't care about things like having friends or having a good job. We still care about a lot of the same things. And so if we feel like the only way to have those things is to go along with things that aren't going to work well for us, sometimes we're going to be willing to do that. And it often comes at our own expense. If we start saying no in a situation, in a relationship or a friendship or a job to things that we know are gonna hurt us, that can be scary because we might lose that friendship. We might lose that relationship. We might lose that job. But every single relationship or job or whatever we have in our life, there is an opportunity cost. If we are putting energy into that job or that relationship, that means that we are not able to look for or be in a relationship or job that might work better for us. And so it can feel like there's this potential loss, and there is, but there's also a potential gain. If something's not the right fit, often it's better for us not to be there. I had a friend once where it was not working out, and I kept trying to make it work. And finally, I realized like it doesn't fit with this one person, but I'm actually getting along pretty well with everybody else. Like maybe this isn't me. I think there's a lot of times where we assume it's us when maybe it's not us. But there are some things, and ADHD can contribute to this, autism can contribute to this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff mentally that can contribute to this where we start to have the same issue again and again. And we realize that like maybe it is us, right? It's us coming up against the expectations that everybody seems to have. And at that point, it can be really tempting to say, okay, well, I will just like completely sacrifice myself because clearly the issue is me. And I will just do what they want me to do in the way that they want me to do it. And I don't have a choice, right? Like what is my choice? It's either that or be alone. That's very black and white. It's either I do what they want me to do or I will be alone. And it is not that simple. And the truth is sometimes by doing what they want you to do, when it comes at the expense of you being able to be who you are, leaves you alone. Because in that case, you are only being accepted for this version of yourself that you are not, which is really lonely. And it's exhausting and you can't keep it up. And so it ends up almost being this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, let me be this person that you want me to be. Let me do all these things that I know that I can't sustain. Make myself fit. Make myself be a good fit for this relationship I really want or this job I really want or whatever, only to then lose it later when you've already invested so much. Because if it's not something you can keep up, at some point something's got to give. And so you've kind of set yourself up to be in this situation where either because it wasn't a good fit in the first place, like you're going to be disappointed because you're not going to get your own needs met, or they're going to be disappointed because eventually you're going to stop being this person that they're trying to be. It took me a long time to realize, like, you're getting punished either way. Like, you're getting punished by them leaving, or you're getting punished by having to do things that aren't okay for you, having to agree to things that aren't okay for you. And when it's a willing sacrifice for something that you care about, that's one thing, right? Like, I'm putting myself through a lot to write this book, but that's a choice that I'm making. And it's a choice I can only freely make because I can say no. We're talking, consent is a really big thing, right? Like, consent is important. If you can't say no, you can't consent. So my experience with saying no is like, I'm impulsive, I'm a people pleaser, I want to make everybody happy, and I agree to things sometimes that maybe I shouldn't agree to. And then I realize that I shouldn't have done that. But, by then, sometimes it can feel too late. So one of the things that I do is, if I agree to something, I give myself a little bit of a time period, like maybe 24 hours, to check back in with myself and be like, am I actually okay with that? Sometimes I buy myself time when I think about it, but I just know that my impulse is going to be to say yes to things. And I kind of try to guard against that. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I feel absolutely comfortable saying no in the moment, in situations where I know that it might cost something that I care about. But for now, at least, I'm trying to give myself the permission to take a little time to think about it. So sometimes it's a, hey, what would that entail? And that buys me a little time to think. Sometimes it's a, let me think about it. Sometimes it's a, that sounds really exciting. Maybe let me check my schedule. And I'm not just checking my schedule at that point. I'm also getting a reality check from a few other people. Sometimes it's like, is this something that we can talk about later so that I have time to think about it? Buying yourself time, I think, is one way to make it so that you can say no, so that you can check in with yourself and not just do the knee-jerk reaction of saying yes. The times I feel like I can't say no are the times where I'm afraid of retaliation. I'm afraid of the reaction that somebody's gonna have. I'm afraid of them punishing me for not saying yes. The safer I feel to say no, I feel like the healthier that relationship ends up being, or that friendship, or that job. And it works out a lot better. If I don't feel like I can say no, it ends up being worse for everybody involved, because I end up agreeing to things that then I can't actually sustain. The key to saying no is knowing that it's safe to. And if you're in a position to make it safe for somebody to say no, I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, because if they can say no, they can say yes. And if it's their choice, they can make the choice that makes sense for them.
Speaking of saying no, sometimes we need some help figuring out when we need to. Sansama can help with this. I honestly struggle with a lot of technology, especially when it involves time management. But Sansama is a planning tool I keep coming back to, because when I have time to use it, it's incredibly helpful. This week, I learned a bunch of new shortcuts and how to use weekly planning, which is very ADHD friendly. I'm so excited to try this. I'll show you what they taught me. I can enter weekly planning mode, quickly write out what my priorities this week are, usually around 3. I click next, it automatically formats them and lets me post them right to Slack where my team can see them. Then I can create tasks, hit R to tie them to one of my weekly objectives, and then hover over them and hit X to auto schedule them. And they show up right in my Google Calendar. I can set rules for the auto scheduler, what time it's okay to schedule tasks, how much buffer I want between them, easily rearrange the tasks by clicking on the day and dragging stuff around in my calendar to make sure it fits. This is really exciting because it's actually faster than doing it in Google Calendar. And seeing how my most important tasks fit into my week is definitely more effective than trying to hold it all in my head. I clearly have a lot to do this week, but when I'm finished editing my book, I'm going to take some time to learn what else Sansama can do. By the way, Sansama loves supporting this community, and they are so ADHD friendly. They have a trial period that doesn't require a credit card up front, so you can decide whether or not you want to be charged for it after you've tried it out. If you'd like to give it a try, go to sansama.com/a/howtoADHD. And if you need any support, you can click on this friendly little emojicon support guy here and search their help docs and even send them a message. Let me know what you think. I'd love to let them know.
Thank you to my brain advocates and all my Patreon brains for making it so that I can put out the kind of content that I want to put out, talk about what I want to talk about, and hopefully it serves this community well. Like, subscribe, click all the things, and I will see you next video. Bye, brains.